Postwar Japan, from defeat to economic miracle under Allied occupation. When Emperor Hirohito addressed the nation in August 1945, conceding Japan's surrender, few could have predicted the transformative era to follow. The country lay in ruins from relentless firebombings and the shocking devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, while millions of demobilized soldiers returned to shattered homes. Food shortages and homelessness were rampant. Yet over the next several years, under the watchful eye of Allied occupiers, primarily led by the United States, Japan underwent one of history's most dramatic rebuilds. This transformation laid the groundwork for the so-called Japanese economic miracle, turning a militaristic empire into a peaceful, technologically advanced democracy in just a few decades. The story of how Japan rebounded so swiftly illuminates both the resilience of its people and the powerful alignment of Allied strategic interests during the early Cold War. In September 1945, General Douglas MacArthur arrived in Tokyo as Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers, SCAP, effectively becoming Japan's de facto ruler during the occupation. His mandate extended beyond disarmament to comprehensive political, economic, and social reforms designed to prevent any resurgence of militarism. One immediate priority was disbanding the Imperial Army and Navy, a task made less contentious by Japan's utter defeat. Tens of thousands of officers were purged from positions of power, while war industries like aircraft production were banned. At the same time, MacArthur shielded Emperor Hirohito from prosecution, deeming him essential to maintaining order and averting a political vacuum. This controversial decision angered many who believed the emperor bore ultimate responsibility for the war, but MacArthur reasoned that using the emperor's prestige in service of peace outweighed seeking retribution. The result was a perplexing scenario. Hirohito publicly denied divinity yet remained a revered symbol, facilitating acceptance of occupation directives. Crucial to remolding Japan was the creation of a new constitution, promulgated in 1947. Drafted partly by American legal experts but given local input, this document renounced war in Article 9, banning Japan from maintaining a traditional military. It also enshrined democratic ideals, universal suffrage, civil liberties, and a parliamentary system that dramatically reduced the emperor's role to a figurehead. Land reform targeted the old landlord system, redistributing agricultural plots to tenant farmers. Women gained the right to vote and hold office, transforming social dynamics previously grounded in strict hierarchy. Although these reforms encountered resistance, especially among entrenched elites, the impetus of occupation carried them through. Meanwhile, purges in the bureaucratic and corporate world aimed to root out militarists, though their effectiveness varied. Economically, the early occupation focused on dismantling Japan's zaibatsu, massive conglomerates like Mitsubishi and Mitsui, viewed by the Allies as facilitators of military expansion. Breakup policies aimed to encourage competition and weaken the old networks that had propped up the war machine. Yet soon the dawn of the Cold War changed American priorities. Halting the spread of communism in Asia took precedence over punishing Japan. By the late 1940s, the US pivoted to rebuilding Japan as a stable capitalist ally. Instead of total economic disarmament, Washington poured resources into reconstructing Japanese infrastructure, encouraging technology transfer, and removing certain occupation restrictions to jumpstart industrial output. This pragmatic shift, sometimes called the reverse course, meant purges were relaxed, and many former bureaucrats returned to positions of influence, bringing institutional knowledge that helped hasten recovery. Helping Japan's revival was the Korean War outbreak in 1950. The US used Japan as a logistical hub, funneling military contracts that spurred local manufacturing. Factories once dedicated to munitions were repurposed for vehicles, steel, textiles, and electronics to supply the US Army and UN forces. These war procurement contracts acted as an economic jolt, boosting employment and technical skills. At the same time, American experts guided Japan to adopt policies encouraging savings, investment, and export-driven growth. A highly educated workforce, disciplined from pre-war schooling, proved adept at absorbing new industrial methods. Over time, local companies embraced a blend of Western technology and Japanese organizational principles, lean production, quality control circles, that would become hallmarks of the next few decades. Socially, the occupation lifted wartime censorship and introduced more liberal media freedoms. The Japanese press reeled from the extent of official wrongdoing revealed by war crimes trials and occupation press releases. Civilians witnessed trials like the Tokyo Tribunal, though they also saw that top figures such as Emperor Hirohito, certain scientists, and conservative power brokers remained unscathed. While some critics condemned this selective justice, Most citizens were preoccupied with survival, scavenging food, rebuilding houses, and forging new livelihoods. Under rationing and controlled markets, daily life was tough, but black markets flourished, and the economy gradually stabilized. Year by year, consumer goods reappeared, public transport resumed, and children returned to schools restructured to emphasize democratic values over imperial propaganda. By 1952, the occupation formally ended with the Treaty of San Francisco. Japan regained sovereignty, though it continued to rely on the US for defense under a bilateral security pact. American bases dotted the islands, ensuring the US a strategic presence in East Asia as the Cold War deepened. Over subsequent years, Japan's economic engine roared into high gear. Rebuilding war-torn factories with modern equipment gave Japanese firms an edge, enabling them to produce increasingly competitive exports. Government ministries like MITI, Ministry of International Trade and Industry, coordinated industrial policy, focusing resources on sectors like steel, shipbuilding, electronics, and automobiles. By the 1960s and 1970s, Japan was churning out automobiles and consumer electronics that conquered global markets, culminating in what many dubbed the Japanese economic miracle. Rapid growth elevated living standards dramatically, as the memory of post-war poverty faded. Despite these achievements, the post-war era also spurred debates over unresolved wartime traumas. Many Japanese intellectuals criticized the occupation's choice not to fully confront the emperor's culpability. Right-wing groups sought to roll back certain pacifist elements of the constitution, especially Article 9, but popular sentiment largely supported anti-militarism. Victims from neighboring countries, such as Korean forced laborers and Chinese survivors of atrocities, found little closure in the new Japan's focus on prosperity. Their demands for official apologies or compensation often ran up against nationalist politicians unwilling to tarnish Japan's rebranded image. Consequently, historical revisionism persists, with some Japanese textbooks downplaying events like the Nanjing Massacre or forced prostitution of comfort women. Still, the transformation from an aggressive empire to a pacifist democracy is remarkable, given the thoroughness of wartime devastation. For historians, post-war Japan's trajectory exemplifies how occupation policies and geopolitical interests can reshape a defeated nation's fate. General MacArthur's role remains controversial. Did he deliver a stable, democratic ally or stifle deeper introspection by preserving certain power structures? Did the US truly eradicate militarism or merely pave the way for Japan's re-emergence as an economic, if not military, powerhouse? Nonetheless, few can deny the success story of Japan's rapid modernization. Its citizens, once instructed to die for the emperor, embraced a constitution that renounced war, poured effort into education and industry, and forged one of the world's leading economies. The occupation's legacy endures in present-day Japanese politics, particularly over security policy and the self-defense forces. Successive governments have tested the limits of Article 9, debating whether to authorize collective self-defense or expand roles abroad. Nationalists question why Japan still relies on American bases, while pacifists cite the post-war constitution as a beacon of learned humility from World War II. Internationally, Japan's relationship with the US remains a cornerstone of East Asian stability, bridging trade partnerships and shared defense arrangements. Meanwhile, war memories linger in the region. China, Korea, and other neighbors recall the brutality of Japanese occupation, sometimes clashing with Tokyo's approach to wartime apologies. All of these facets trace back to that pivotal moment in 1945 when total defeat transformed into an unlikely rebirth, guided first by Allied oversight and then by Japan's own determined drive toward peace and prosperity. In essence, the post-war occupation shaped modern Japan in countless ways, democratizing governance, reforming land ownership, sparking labor rights, empowering women, and catalyzing an economic boom that reshaped global commerce. The devastation of World War II and the atomic bombings loomed large, instilling a broad cultural commitment to anti-nuclear sentiment. Nonetheless, Japan navigated the ensuing Cold War by aligning with the West, leveraging American aid, and cultivating a highly skilled, industrious workforce. This synergy propelled a nation from ravaged empire to economic titan. While not devoid of contradictions or controversies, that metamorphosis stands as a hallmark example of how, under pressure and foreign guidance, a society can pivot from military ambition to a focus on technological innovation and economic growth. Subscribe to Legends of the Battlefield for more stories of brilliant tactics and legendary leaders.